Right.
So how do people overcome obstacles to this progress, their own personal development through coaching?
Well, we have our thoughts and our feelings. They're our internal, they're always internal. And then they are demonstrated very much through our behavior and our communication, which is what is actually shown externally. Many, in fact, probably most of our obstacles, Dr. Joyce, are in fact created by us, and they actually prevent us from moving forward. So, as I said earlier, we all have our stories, our self-talk. And so what that coach does, or what a coach does, I think, as I mentioned earlier, is actually bring out our story and let us see it for the first time. That's why I have a coach myself. I believe every coach needs a coach because we all get so caught up in our own story. It's always about realizing really what's perhaps out of date now, what's not applicable to our current now. And once we actually realize what our out of date and unresourceful habits are, and that they are actually stopping us from progressing forward, suddenly we have this whole new world opening up to us, and we're able to create a new book or flick an old habit. And if we don't want to perhaps get rid of the book, we can actually at least just start a new chapter.
That's great. That's a great way of putting it. We really can be our own worst enemies, and I think it's important that we see it for the first time each time, because one of the things about change is it's constant. So we have to change with the changes, and we can do that by having our own coaches, and I 100% agree with you on that. Well, what does the review process achieve?
They're very important because the reviews actually check that the goals that we did set at the beginning of any particular coaching process are moving us forward, and that the desired outcomes are actually happening and within the time, the time frames that we discussed at the beginning of any coaching session. And really, I also do reviews at the end of each session by session, because that allows the client to see that the progress that they're making is consistent, and it adds value and makes them accountable, and they can see how they're progressing themselves. It also keeps the coach on track, and that's always a good thing, isn't it?
I do think, absolutely, it is a good thing, and I do think that once something is written on a page, it becomes real. So if you're working with a client and they see that you have this checklist, a review session, if you will, and they can see session by session where they were and where they are, that's where your past helps you with your present and then gets you into your future.
Absolutely. And what I've got, I often say, in fact, a book has been written by Dr. Wayne Dwyer on it, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I mean, it's really that simple. But we don't know how simple things can be sometimes, and that's how a coach just keeps us on track, which is wonderful.
Well, it's true. I think sometimes when something is so simple that you don't see it, it has to be complicated for you to see it. But if you just take some thought time and you just think about what you have done or what you're doing, where you're at, what you want, where you want to go, I think it really does help, and definitely coaches can bring that out in a person. Do you find that people can feel anxious about disclosing sensitive personal information? And if so, how could they be reassured about this at this point?
People can feel a bit, human beings being what we are. We can read about what coaching is, and we know what to expect, but there can still be a sense of vulnerability. So one of the wonderful things about coaching conversations, and I think it's a really important point to remember, is that conversations don't actually need to have any information disclosed, because coaching's not about fixing, Dr. Joyce. It's for well people going forward, and it's always about extending and expanding and unleashing what I would call latent or dormant potential sometimes. So it's always about taking someone to their higher level of self-understanding and awareness. The other thing to remember, too, with professional coaches, they uphold a code of ethics. That is part of their professional body, whether they belong to the ICF which is the International Coach Federation, or the MCF, which is the Meta Coach Foundation, or the IAC, are the three main professional international bodies. The IAC is the International Association of Coaches, and a coach actually signs, an agreement that contains a non-disclosure clause. So, and the client also receives a copy of that when they are with a professional coach. So, hopefully that always reassures them and just eliminates any anxiety that they might have.
Very good information. So tell our listeners how to get in touch with you.
I would love to. I'm based in New Zealand and I do actually coach internationally. I have www.directsuccess.co.nz or www.directsuccesscoaching.com. And my telephone number is on my website, but it's New Zealand, which is the country code is 64-7-846-5486. And my email address is also jan@directsuccess.co.nz.